morning I almost didn't say anything. I had grease on my hands and a fuel hose over my shoulder, and the whole engineering team was already walking past me like I was part of the floor. That's the job. I don't mind it. I'm Will Greer. I fuel the planes at Caldwell Aeronautics. I check the tires. I patch the hydraulic seals when the line crew misses one, and I stay out of the way. 2 years I've done it. The airfield knows my truck, knows my thermos, knows the particular way I move through a hangar before the sun's fully up. Nobody knows much else about me, and I've been fine with that. My son Colt is 11. He's got his mother's eyes and her patience, which is good, because his father has used up most of his patience on other things. After I lost her, I needed a job with edges, something I could see the end of at the end of the day. No deadlines at 30,000 feet, no phones ringing on a Saturday because a prototype test went sideways. So I took the maintenance position at Caldwell, and I showed up and I did my work, and every night I got home to make dinner and help with homework, and watch Colt fall asleep on the couch with a book on his chest. That was the whole plan. That was enough. I just didn't expect them to build that particular aircraft 2 feet from where I park my truck. The first time I saw it, I stopped walking. The Caldwell prototype, their Series 7 remotely piloted system, the one the defense contractor was coming to evaluate, sat under the lights in Hangar C like something I'd sketched on paper 14 years ago. Because I had. The fuselage profile, the swept-back stabilizers, the redundant flight surface layout that let the aircraft recover from a flat spin without pilot input. I know those lines the way I know Colt's handwriting. I built their ancestor. I wrote the engineering log their lead designer had on his shelf. I didn't say anything. It wasn't my place anymore. I fueled the aircraft, checked the undercarriage, and went home. The demonstration was scheduled for a Tuesday in October. Caldwell's CEO, Dana Ashworth, sharp suit, sharper voice, the kind of woman who makes a room reorganize itself when she walks in, had invited a defense contractor for a full live evaluation. $27 million on the table, with a follow-on contract worth another 40 million reasons for the engineering team to be nervous, and you could see it on every one of them as they set up in the hangar. Marcus Webb, the lead engineer, checking his laptop 3 times a minute. The 2 test coordinators hovering over the ground station like they were afraid to touch it. 4 people who didn't need to be there standing near the doors, which is always a sign that someone in charge is worried. I was in the corner, fuel check on the adjacent aircraft, not my demonstration. The Series 7 lifted cleanly. I'll give them that. The aircraft climbed beautifully, banked north, settled into the evaluation pattern at 800 feet. The contractor's reps watched from the tarmac with a clipboard and a pair of binoculars, nodding. Dana Ashworth stood straight as a post. For about 4 minutes, everything was exactly what it was supposed to be. Then the aircraft stopped responding. It didn't fall, it just kept flying, straight and level, locked on its last heading, the ground station's control inputs going nowhere. Webb's hands moved fast over the keyboard. Nothing. He switched to the backup frequency. Nothing. I watched the Series 7 track north, calm and indifferent, while the room behind me went very quiet, in a particular way that means people are deciding whether to panic. Override's not responding, Webb said. Primary and secondary, it's not seeing us. Get it back, Dana Ashworth said. Her voice was controlled, but the word back came out a half step too hard. Working on it. But his hands had slowed down, which is never a good sign. Slow hands on a keyboard mean a man has run out of ideas and is starting over. The contractor's lead rep lowered his binoculars. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. I set down the fuel hose. The Series 7 was still flying north, smooth and level, unbothered. I could see its navigation light blinking at the edge of the tarmac view. Steady, patient, waiting for a signal that made sense. I knew exactly what it was waiting for. I'd written that patience into it, or into its grandfather anyway, in a drafting room in Columbus, while Colt was still small enough to fall asleep in my lap. I don't know exactly what made me speak. Maybe it was 14 years of knowing what those lines of code look like when they get confused, and knowing that there's exactly one way to unconfuse them that isn't in any manual Webb would have read. Maybe it was the image of $40 million and 3 years of somebody's work flying north over Tanner Falls on autopilot until the fuel ran out. Maybe it was something simpler. A man who spent his whole career building things doesn't enjoy watching them fail when he knows the reason. "Mr. Webb," I said. He didn't look up. "Mr. Webb, the aircraft's in a control authority conflict. It thinks it's received a competing command from a secondary input. There's a backup terminal, the hardwired one on the east wall, the gray panel, been there since the system was installed. If you send a command clear from that station with the original authorization string, the aircraft will re-establish primary link inside of 60 seconds. He looked up at me then. So did Dana Ashworth. She looked at me the way people look at furniture that has started talking. "Who let maintenance into the evaluation hangar?" she said, not loudly, but aimed. "I'm supposed to be here," I said. "Fuel check, adjacent aircraft." "Then get back to it." "Yes, ma'am, but the aircraft is going to cross the restricted corridor in about 4 minutes. And if it does, you'll have a different conversation on your hands than the one you're currently having." She held my eyes for a moment. Whatever she was going to say next, Webb got there first. "Where did you say the terminal was?" "East wall, gray panel, second from the left. The access code is 5977 Delta. The command string is control auth clear, and then the original system key. If you don't have the system key, the factory default is on a yellow tag zip-tied to the terminal itself. Nobody ever changes the factory default." Webb was already moving. I watched him find the panel, flip the cover, pull the yellow tag. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard. I crossed the hangar. I didn't ask permission. I just walked to the terminal, looked at the screen, and typed. Control auth clear, system key, enter. For 3 seconds nothing happened, and I could feel Dana Ashworth's eyes on the back of my neck. Then the ground station beeped. Webb's screen refreshed. "We've got link," he said, and the word came out quiet, like he was afraid to say it too loud. I typed the return command. On the tarmac through the hangar door, the Series 7 banked gently left and turned south, back toward the field. Nobody spoke. The contractor's rep raised his binoculars again. Webb watched his screen with his mouth slightly open. Dana Ashworth stood very still. The aircraft touched down 11 minutes later, clean and smooth, exactly where it was supposed to. A couple of people started to move and talk at once, the kind of movement that happens when a room lets out a breath it's been holding. I walked back to the adjacent aircraft and picked up my fuel hose. Dana Ashworth caught me at the hangar door. "That command string," she said. "That's not in any of our documentation." "No, ma'am. How do you know it?" I thought about how to answer that. "Because I wrote it," I said. She looked at me. "You wrote a command string for a remotely piloted aircraft." "I wrote the system architecture for the aircraft," I said. "The Series 7 is a third-generation refinement of a prototype I designed at Harlan Dynamics in 2010 and 2011. We called it the Wraith. Caldwell licensed the core platform in 2014. The control authority logic hasn't changed much. It's a good design. It just has one quirk when it receives a simultaneous input from an unlicensed secondary source, which is what happened today. Someone's laptop on the guest network sent a spurious signal. The aircraft did exactly what I told it to do 14 years ago. It went autonomous and waited for a clean input. That's the right call in a contested environment. It's just inconvenient during a demonstration. She stared at me. "You're our maintenance technician," she said. "Yes, ma'am. You've been fueling our planes, and checking the tires, and patching hydraulic seals when the line crew misses one." Behind her, Webb had pulled something up on his laptop. He walked over slowly, turned the screen toward Dana Ashworth. I recognized what was on it without needing to look. The Wraith engineering log, scanned and archived, the title page showing the project lead's name in the header. William T. Greer, Harlan Dynamics, 2010 to 2012. Dana Ashworth looked at the screen. She looked at me. She looked at the aircraft sitting quiet on the tarmac. She said something under her breath that I was glad Colt wasn't there to hear. The contractor's lead rep shook her hand on the way out. He handed her a card and told her his team would be in touch. The demonstration had been, in his professional opinion, thorough. It had shown the aircraft performing under unexpected conditions and recovering correctly, which was more informative than a clean run would have been. Dana Ashworth stood in the hangar door and watched his car drive off the airfield. Then she turned around. "Mr. Greer," she said, "I'd like to speak with you in my office." I set the fuel hose down properly this time. Her office was glass and clean lines, the kind of room that tells you a great deal about what a person values. She sat across the desk and asked me a question I hadn't expected. Not what I wanted or what I was after, but why I'd walked away from engineering in the first place. I told her about my wife, about the years of late nights and international calls and flying to 3 countries in 2 weeks, and how I looked up one day after she passed and my son was 8 years old, and I'd missed more than I'd been present for. How I sold the condo in Columbus, moved back to Tanner Falls where I grew up, and took a job where I could see the end of every shift and get home to make dinner. She was quiet for a moment. "And you've been here 2 years," she said. 2 years in March. Fueling planes. She said it carefully, like she was testing the weight of it. "It's honest work," I said. She nodded, slowly. "I'd like to offer you a position on the engineering team. Consultant basis, if you prefer. Project hours, no relocation, home every night by 5. I looked at her. "What position?" "Whatever you want, but I'd start with Series 7 lead, because as of this morning, you're the only person in this building who actually understands it." I thought about Colt, about the homework on the kitchen table, the catfish he's been trying to catch out of the creek behind our house since June, the way he falls asleep with a book on his chest, about what his mother would have said, because she never thought I should have quit in the first place. "I have one condition," I said. Dana Ashworth folded her hands on the desk. "Name it." "I need to be home by 5, every night, non-negotiable." She looked at me for a moment, then something shifted in her expression, not soft exactly, but honest. "Done," she said. "Starting when?" I drove home at 4:15, which is earlier than usual. Colt was in the backyard with a fishing rod and a bucket of hope, and when I came around the corner of the house, he looked up and said, "You're early." "Slow day," I said. He studied me for a moment with those eyes of his mother's. "You've got that look," he said. "What look?" "The one you get when something good happened, and you're going to wait to see if I notice." I sat down in the grass next to him. The creek moved past, quiet and steady. He handed me the other rod. I thought about the Series 7 hanging in the October air, turning south, coming home. I thought about a room full of engineers and executives watching a maintenance man type a command string into a terminal, like he owned the machine. He did, actually. He did. "Something good happened," I said. Colt kept his eyes on the water. "I figured," he said. "We fished until the light went out of the sky, and when we went inside I made dinner, and he told me about his day, and I told him a little. Not everything, just enough. And when he fell asleep on the couch with a book on his chest, I covered him with the blanket his mother made and stood at the window for a while, looking at the dark airfield to the south. There's a thing a man knows, after enough years of quiet work. Worth doesn't disappear because nobody's looking at it. It just waits. It does the job. It checks the tires and patches the seals, and stays until the moment arrives when it's the only thing in the room that can do what needs to be done. Then it walks to the terminal, and it types.